This morning I'm here in Winnipeg, Manitoba to help celebrate the Kanreki for Toyota Canada, the 60th anniversary of the brand here in Canada. We're going across the country, starting on the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, driving a number of vehicles across the country. I'm on the fifth wave, starting here in Winnipeg, and today we're going to be driving to Saskatoon, about 800 kilometers of nonstop driving to get us into the next province. So join me as we continue along on this journey of Kanreki and show you some of the vehicles that Toyota has to offer here, as well as our experiences as I go across the Canadian Great Plains. So one thing that I really appreciated about this trip was the fact that I've actually been to all four of these cities individually. I've only ever driven from Edmonton to Calgary, but I've never driven between the other two, or from Saskatoon to Edmonton. So this was a good opportunity to see some of the country, see places that most Canadians and most people just aren't going to voyage across, just because there really is nothing. So we set off from downtown Winnipeg and made our way to our first little stop, which was just outside of the city, followed by a continuation along some dirt tracks and then pretty much nothing. You can see in the time lapse that there is a whole lot of nothing as we're driving along, but it's kind of peaceful in the sense, even though it is a long drive, and similar to how much driving we did a little while ago when we took the BMW i7 M70 up to Quebec, it felt less tiring just because there isn't a whole lot going on. There isn't traffic, there aren't a lot of big trucks, the roads are completely flat, very smooth, no bumps or any real potholes or anything, so it's a relaxing drive despite the fact that there isn't much to see. Now here on our first day, you can see there's quite a bit of cloud cover, but in fact that's smoke from the wildfires. And there were a couple places that we drove through that you could really smell the burnt wood and other things that have been set on fire. But you can see as we continue through our journey, it gets much thicker. So there had been some accidents earlier in the week. Some large transport trucks were in poor visibility areas and got into accidents, so we were lucky. There was no issues along our route. Basically just hit the road, continued along, and again, not a whole lot to see, but still peaceful in its own way. So right now we are in Saskatchewan, just outside of Saskatoon at the Woneskowa Heritage Site. Now, we drove all day yesterday. It was about 800 kilometers or so of driving to go from Winnipeg to Saskatoon. We had a couple stops along the way on our cross-Canada journey here with Toyota Canada. We started off in the Tacoma TRD Pro and then got into the Crown Signia. Now, that's car I actually featured a little while ago when we did our first drive. Now we're here in the Camry, again a vehicle that we did a first drive on a couple months ago. But we're going to be exploring the park here today with the group. We're going to be doing some activities, and then we're going to be taking another pretty long drive here from Saskatoon up to Edmonton, where we're going to be stopping for the night. So join me as we go around and explore the beauty of this park and everything else that we have going on here today with Toyota Canada. So unfortunately for us, there were no buffalo to see. They are there. There's about 44 of them in the park now, but they're all essentially sleeping at this time of year. They're not doing a whole lot. Mating season's over, and they're just essentially relaxing, waiting for winter to come. But learning about the rich history of the land and how the indigenous people who roamed here thousands of years ago were able to use the natural geography of this area in order to hunt and capture the buffalo that they needed in order to survive. Now, this was not only interesting to learn about the history here, but also to learn a little bit about what they've been doing by having art galleries featuring indigenous artists and have a rotating sort of events come through to be able to show off our First Nations accomplishments and history. So it was a very fascinating experience to learn about the land, to see it, and despite not being able to see any buffalo, still an excellent time here for us to learn a little bit more about the great country that we all live in, and some things that we take for granted that we wouldn't even know were here had we not had the opportunity to come and check it out. Our second stop in Saskatoon is ENS Toyota. Not only are they one of the oldest Toyota dealerships in Canada, but they are one of only a few that are able to sell the 70 Series Land Cruiser. Now, it's not for personal use, you can't drive them on the road, but they do use them for the mining industry out here in the western part of Canada. They're able to take these trucks, modify them for the use underground. You can see here in the B-roll, we've got essentially a regular truck on the left, and then one of the ones that they've worked on and how they've modified it to work for the needs of the industries out here. So it's interesting to see because the 70 Series Land Cruiser is available for sale in other markets. You can buy them in places like Australia. They're relatively affordable when you compare it to the pricing here in Canada. But because these ones are not certified to be on the road here, you can't drive them. And then once they're end of life from the mines, they just get destroyed. There's really no life left in them. But it was really interesting to hear about how this Toyota dealership has essentially been able to build an industry around the mining industries here in Western Canada, how they've been able to serve those customers by taking a extremely reliable truck SUV platform and accommodating it for the needs of those businesses. One thing I really appreciate about dealerships like this is when they take charge and get involved with the community in the enthusiast community. The ENS Toyota Fest is a great example of that, where the dealership comes together, invites everybody from the area who's got classic Toyota cars to bring them out and show them off. This is something that we don't see too often, here and there with maybe some of the higher end luxury brands, but this is such an easy way for dealerships to get involved in the community and build some reputation with the enthusiasts and show off maybe their own collection. So in this case, they had some classic cars in the showroom, getting ready for that ENS Toyota Fest, actually happening the same weekend that I'm putting the voiceover together for this video. But it was great to be able to check out the dealership. It was awesome to see how they're modifying these Land Cruisers for heavy duty use, and just to see how dealerships work across the country. Surprisingly, they're pretty similar, whether you're in Toronto or you're in Saskatoon or whether you're out west. Today I'm standing just south of the Edmonton city center here at the Edmonton International Airport. Yesterday we drove from Saskatoon to Edmonton, and we're here to talk about hydrogen. It's something that we haven't actually featured here on Test Drive before, but it is an alternative to a battery electric vehicle, giving you a zero emission driving experience. Although up until now it has been a little expensive, whether it's refining it to actually make the hydrogen or having refueling stations. But here the Edmonton International Airport is jumping in with hydrogen. They're not only using passenger vehicles like the Toyota Mirai to be able to get around and use a zero emission vehicle, but they're also thinking to convert some of their heavy duty equipment so that during the winter months and summer months, they don't have to rely as heavily on fuels like diesel or gas. We're going to be showing you a little bit what's going on here. The rest of the day is going to be driving down to Calgary, where I end my journey on the 60th anniversary Kanreki for Toyota Canada. But we still have a lot of driving to go and a lot more exploring. So join me here on leg 3 and day 3 as we explore the beautiful province of Alberta. So let's talk a minute here about hydrogen, because it's not something that we've talked about here on Test Drive up until now. Our very first stop in Edmonton before heading out on our drive was at Dark Matter Materials. The best way I can describe this place is almost like a think tank of some of the most brilliant minds in hydrogen technology today, working on a way to make hydrogen, physically make hydrogen at a much lower cost than it has been up until now. Now, I don't pretend to understand how any of this works. It's way above my pay grade. But essentially, they've been able to take the normal process of making hydrogen, which usually costs, X amount of dollars, and made it cost a tenth of that, using less material, less water, which is a big one, and less electricity in order to make it happen. Now, this is really cutting edge stuff. They've been working on it for a couple of years. In the B-roll here, as we're in the lab, they're essentially showing us how a regular gas generator, what you normally put gas or diesel in, can be run on hydrogen with very little modifications. And that hydrogen is being produced in real time. So their idea, their hope, is that they can create a way to essentially have a tank of water with their activator and create hydrogen on the fly. So if you've got a hydrogen vehicle, instead of having to put the actual hydrogen in, you can create it on the run. And then the byproduct, what comes out essentially at the end, the waste materials, can be used as a battery. Then I had to ask the question, does this mean you can create hydrogen for a hydrogen car and then essentially create a battery electric vehicle battery with what's left over? And the answer was yes. And not only can it be molded however you want, as you can see here, by example, the Toyota logo, you can mold it into, say, a bumper, make it so that you're not using up as much space and have it work around the materials of a car already. So again, way outside of my pay grade here. I understood enough of it to know that this is a big deal. Now, we also, as I mentioned, we're at the Edmonton International Airport. They're using hydrogen-powered cars like the Toyota Mirai to get around the city and as well as get around the airport. But they're also thinking of using the current heavy-duty equipment they use, say, as a snow plow, and converting those to hydrogen, and actually working so that it can be either hydrogen or gas-powered, because during the winter, it's just too cold to use hydrogen at this time. So for them to have gas as backup would be a great idea, but allowing them to at least have some sort of zero-emission vehicles on their fleet. So they're investing heavily into hydrogen, looking at ways that they can actually create it on site, which sort of ties into where we were before, but also making it so that there's opportunity to invest in hydrogen infrastructure out here in Edmonton. Now, we were still on a bit of a time crunch in order to get down to Calgary on time. That's the only downside to this trip, is we were trying to get a lot done in a short period of time, and we had a lot of distance to cover. I think we were the longest leg out of the 6 in terms of overall distance that we had to drive. Now, again, I've driven from Edmonton to Calgary and vice versa before, so this drive wasn't anything too new for me. Starting off at the airport, we're on sort of the south side of the city area, and it's, again, a pretty straightforward drive. Not a lot of trucks. This is now on a Monday, so it is normal work day here in Alberta, but again, pretty straightforward drive. Not a whole lot to see, not a whole lot to do. We were lucky we had the Toyota Highlander this time around, so fuel efficiency was pretty good, but then the comfort and ride was also nice as well. But again, it's just been a while since I've done this drive. I kind of forgot how long it was. It is still several hours to get from Edmonton to Calgary, and then it being a Monday, traffic, it's going to take a little bit longer, a little bit more volume on the roads. But for the most part, it was a great drive, and it was really nice to finally arrive at the hotel. After 3 full days of driving, it was just nice to finally arrive and not have to worry too much about driving anymore. All right, folks, I'm finally here 1,800 kilometers later in downtown Calgary. We started our trip off in Manitoba, continued on through Saskatchewan into Alberta, and then south down into Calgary. This is the first time I've been here in about 13 years, so it's nice to visit it. Now, we've gone over everything that we've done on this trip so far. I've had the chance to drive a number of different vehicles from Toyota, including some that we haven't had a chance to feature yet on the channel. And it's been a great opportunity not only to drive these vehicles, but to experience the great country that we all come to love and know as Canada. So I'd like to congratulate Toyota Canada on reaching 60 years. It's a big milestone. Now, some of the vehicles I have featured individually, so we'll have links to that at the end of the video, as well as the description below. And we will have some of these vehicles that we featured here later on, like the Land Cruiser. So stay tuned for full reviews of those cars. But until next time, you'll be seeing me back in Ontario, because I'm pretty tired and I'm ready to get home. But it has been a great Kanreki. Thanks.